Woo, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow. Oh, what the hell? Why would I put my seltzer all the way over fucking there when I'm sitting here? All right, you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to grab my drink. Give me a second. I'll be right back. Okay. Don't worry, I'm still here. Just down in the dungeon. Woo. Grabbing my drink. Because you can't get through this shit without having something to drink. You know what I am going to try? So I'm generally a pretty low-carb guy. So I don't drink like full-on sodas. I always drink diet sodas if I drink soda. But I really think that, I got to try. I really got to try that Pepsi Fire. Holy shit. So anyway, let's get into the Q&A, shall we? Woo! Of course, normally these come out on Wednesday. This one's coming out on Thursday. Trying to knock it out here actually pretty early because I'm going to see Wonder Woman tonight. Oh, baby. Me and the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy are going to catch it. We're going to get the hookup. It's going to be fantastic. Most of the reviews for Wonder Woman have been very, very positive. Very positive. I mean, no one's like saying it's the greatest movie of all time, and certainly I don't expect it to be like, the classic, 78, 79 Superman, Christopher Reeves, but I'm definitely excited for this. I mean, I really am. Of course, I haven't been, I've made no bones about that fact. Anyway, yesterday we did the second of two live hangout Q&As for Sovereign Tech, which is a perk for Sovereign Tech patrons. Got some more new patrons this week. Honored to have you on board. In fact, a lot of people apparently are very new listeners to Sovereign Tech in general. So I appreciate you, digging the show, getting into the show. You're definitely in for a ride a very unique ride. I'll just put it that way. So, so thank you to all the patrons, of course, for this. And, I love this opportunity. It's all very off the cuff. I don't generally, unless it really requires it, admittedly, these are just simple Q&As. It's not something where sometimes we do deep dives, and sometimes I do a lot of heavy research for it. But, these are very much meant to be, more fun than anything else. Got some just some dynamite questions yesterday. It was funny as hell. So anyway, speaking of fun, another little perk that comes with, being a patron of Sovereign Tech, I do these little movie reviews. I get to really exercise my geekiness a lot more on Patreon. And so, even though I always like the term nerd more, but whatever. I usually do, it's become a bit of a tradition. I do reviews of the DC, speaking of DC movies like Wonder Woman, but of the DC animated universe, because I consider them, the movies of under that banner to be some of the best movies just straight up ever made. I mean, they're phenomenal. And I did a review for the newest release, which is Vixen, which technically isn't a DC animated universe movie, but it is a DC animated movie. It's not even really a movie. It's actually a compilation of web series, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, you can go back. It's just a couple episodes back from this one if you want to hear that. Some people listen to these. In fact, I got great feedback. Well, I want to read the feedback. So I made a statement. I used a phrase during that where I said kids gloves, and I used that phrase incorrectly, and I just want to read from I just want to make sure the correction's known. And I'm terrible for this. I mix metaphors. I do that shit all the time. And anyway, I appreciated the correction. I just want to read it here. So I'm listening to the Vixen review, and I noticed you were misusing the term kid gloves and saying kids gloves. Kid gloves refers to gloves made of soft leather, usually from young goats, called kids. The phrase is usually handle with kid gloves and means to handle something gently, delicately, gingerly, etc. It has nothing innately to do with human children, although could be used to refer to someone handling a topic delicately when around children so as not to offend them, which I think is what you were trying to say, but it came out in a weird way. Yeah, so there you go. And you know what? And honestly, I did not know that it was in reference to goats. Because... Right, they're, the kid, where you get the softest leather from. Love the reviews of these animated movies, even though I'm not a superhero fan and have never watched any of these. They're still very entertaining to listen to. Well, so yeah, thank you for the correction. I mean that. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad. I try to make everything, even if it's something you as a patron, as a listener, just don't give a shit about. I really try to make it something that that is still entertaining and that there's still some very unique insights and information in. So, and also, as I've said before, I don't expect anybody to listen to every single thing that comes out on Patreon, whatsoever, because there's a lot of shit that comes out. Okay. I release as much as I can, frankly. But I do appreciate that. I appreciate the correction and say, look at that. I'm wrong. Woo, I use it or I'm incorrect in the usage of something. I happily admit to it. And I admit to it openly. So yeah, I appreciate that. Don't ever hesitate to ever call me out if you think I need a good calling out, because, I really can take it. But anyway, all right, let's see. What I got next on the dock here? Okay, this is a good one. This has to do with, it's funny. We're going to talk a little cryptocurrency. We're going to talk a little torrenting, which seem to be both very popular topics for Sovereign Tech in particular, but really around the world. So, and this is actually from the community page on Patreon, which I know some new patrons have already made use of, and glad to see it. I say this all the time. I really wish it could get to the point where I just interact on Patreon. In fact, who started a new Patreon? And she's putting all of her content, like all of her writing. She has such a very, really diverse catalog of content, not just audio, but also writing and a whole bunch of shit. Videos, all the stuff. MK Lords, who has been on Patreon episodes and, of course, Sovereign Tech Prime in the past. She is, as I've said many a time, she is just one of my favorite human beings on the planet. I mean, she is just so awesome. And so I am a patron of her Patreon. I think it's just patreon.com/mklords. Maybe I'll put it in the show notes for this episode. There are a few people that I, would, how to put this, without reservation, that I would recommend supporting. She is one of them. She is just absolutely one of the best. She is the real deal. I could go on and on as to why, but I think just look at her content and you'll get it. I mean, it's so cool to have a central hub of her work, because she's been doing this shit long before me. I mean, and she's just, man, just fearless, fierce as hell. I love it. So anyway, do check that out. All right, so let's see. Let's get to the question here. Yeah. Right. I was saying that I wish everybody would just interact with each other on Patreon. Maybe that'll become a thing. In fact, just real quick, they came out with the numbers. I mean, Patreon has really become a success story, not just for Patreon itself. In fact, for Patreon itself, it's not so much a success story. But I think for 2016, they said that they paid out like $150 million to creators, and there's only like 50,000 some odd accounts. I mean, like, or if I remember correctly, I mean, it was ridiculous amounts of numbers. Now, we know that Patreon takes like a 5% cut, so that, kind of equates to that Patreon, the company, made shy of $8 million. And that's it. And for a company that's really doing so much, in my opinion, I mean, that's kind of small potatoes. It's not bad, but that's almost cottage industry, right? I mean, so, but yeah, obviously they're putting out a lot of those numbers. They want to get, investors on board and everything. And I hope they get them, because I think it's one of the most important projects going out there. I recently got invited. I don't know if every Patreon creator, not just patron, but Patreon creator like myself, I don't know if everybody got this invitation, but I got invited to something called the Patreon community, which is only for creators. And it's like a forum for everybody to kind of talk about ideas and whatever. They asked me, like, when I was filling out the form for it, for the invitation, because they invited me, they said, "What's your biggest problem with Patreon?" And I said, "You don't accept Bitcoin or Zcash." I said, you get on board with Bitcoin, and I can't really think of many other issues that I have. And so, we'll see what happens. I'll certainly be making a stink for cryptocurrencies about that. We'll talk about cryptocurrencies here in a minute. But let's talk about the torrents first. So, because we did talk about them last week, we talked about the war on torrents, and I gave you a bunch in last week's Q&A, gave you a ton of links of torrent sites to go to and to check out. all ones that don't need a invitation either. I mean, there's plenty of those that are invitation only that are a little more secure. But I can't really like hand out invitations to a lot of these sites to every one of my patrons. So, and I don't want to really do a lottery thing. So anyway, I just gave you the ones that, you can just go to and you can, get your shit and get out. Right. Anyway. Let's see. So here it is. Hi, Brian. As the war on torrents continues, would love to hear your views on streaming content via Kodi. For example, private internet access VPN running on a Fire TV or /cheap Android box with Kodi preload or Kodi loaded. Seems pretty solid to me. Am I missing something? Okay, so this is really a huge conversation being had right now. Over, considering that how torrent sites are constantly going down, could you just use media software like Kodi that can connect to a bunch of different services and just stream from that? And the services could always kind of change in the back end or whatever else. And that's the way that you could just watch movies. And also like the boxes that come say preloaded, like those cheap Android boxes that the listener mentioned, that come preloaded with Kodi and are all set, ready to go to start pirating some movies and whatever else and stream them. I mean, these are hot topics. In fact, we didn't get to this story last week on was it episode 227 of Sovereign Tech? We didn't get to the story, but there was a story that Facebook is in their, they have their marketplace now on Facebook, but Facebook is not allowing the sale of those kinds of boxes. At all. Like you really, how exactly they know about that? Well, I mean, that's, that's kind of up in the air. There's ways they know, but anyway, that's not important. But we know in the UK that entire warehouses have been raided that have had these devices with Kodi, say, pre-installed and, for sale for $100 or something, depending on what the conversion rate is to the pound, of course. But I mean, this is something that people are really afraid about. They're kind of the modern version of, of what they called hot boxes. Now, I'm not talking about pussies. Okay. Hot boxes as in cable boxes that could descramble HBO and Showtime and all this. It's really like the latest version of that. Now, I don't really have a problem with them. I mean, in Kodi, of course, is the newest version of what used to be called XMBC, which is just this kind of media player layer that takes over your entire OS, whatever you happen to be running. I really don't have an issue with this sort of thing. I think it's fine. I think Kodi is actually a really great project that has a rich history, certainly in the tech world, and a good one. And it's been around for some time now. I mean, it was originally designed, I think, for the original Xbox. If not the original Xbox, the Xbox 360 was originally what Kodi was meant, was being developed for, to turn it into a more serious media player. Boy, I miss the days of cracking shit on the original Xbox, way, way back. I had one. There's a lot of brilliance in that machine that people don't respect. I know a lot of people just call it the Halo box because that's usually what people think of, that anybody played on it was just the original Halo. It was a lot more. Microsoft was really doing a lot of experimentation with that stuff that I think is just now going to come to fruition. In fact, this week was Computex in Taiwan. I might talk about Computex a little bit and things that were announced. There were some interesting things announced. A lot of Windows MR stuff, a lot of other things that were announced there that I might bring up on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode this week. But anyway, let's see. So Kodi, these boxes with Kodi on them and just doing streaming instead of necessarily torrenting. So there's one, I think it's fine. Okay. There's one sort of initial problem with it. And that is really people that just stream instead of actually torrent content. They're really just leechers. So in torrenting, you have seeders and you have leechers. Seeders of torrents are people that, and it's not just one person. Sometimes it could just be one person, but usually it's a multitude of people that have all downloaded, say, an album or a movie or something like this. And the seeders are the ones that have complete copies, and they are allowing people to download from them on torrents. Okay. Now, anybody that just streams, like say with a Kodi box of some kind, they're really just a leecher. A leecher is somebody who just like downloads the entire thing, but then pauses it and doesn't upload at all, doesn't share in the uploading process, except for during the time frame in which they're downloading it as well. The magic of torrents, right? So there's a little bit of a, there's kind of a social stigma or a community stigma. If there's a torrent community, there's kind of a community stigma around people that just stream, because really they're just leechers, Now, I'm not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with that. I mean, you could consider it division of labor. Not everybody needs to give up bandwidth. Maybe not everybody can give up bandwidth, considering the other things they may need to do with their internet bandwidth. Okay, so yeah, I mean, like, there's that. The point the person's making, is it a solid solution? Absolutely. It's totally solid. Kodi on a Fire TV stick or on whatever platform you could put it on. You put it on a Raspberry Pi. I don't care. Whatever you put it on. Like, yep, that works great. And you don't necessarily have the issue of uploading. You don't have uploading problems, which is where the legality becomes So in most countries around the world, and there's countries with varying laws, okay, but in most countries around the world, it's illegal to upload. It's not illegal to download something. It's just illegal to upload. Like, that's where the real issue, comes in. Now, some people want to, there's a gray area on what's a upload and a download, and it's such a legal morass. It's almost impossible to really talk about without having a lawyer next to you. But anyway, so streaming has the advantage of largely just being a download. And so it skirts a lot of legality, a lot of what's considered illegal. So there's an advantage as far as that goes, certainly. But again, that advantage is seen by some people in the torrent community as kind of a slap to the face. Because it's like, oh, well, you're not going to contribute your bandwidth, well, screw you, right? That's how some people feel. I mean, there used to be a thing where, like, some torrent sites, like Demonoid used to be really famous for this, where they would cap, like, they knew, because they had their trackers, they knew how much you were downloading and how much you were uploading. And if your download and upload rate weren't like 50-50, they would start, they would give you access problems to torrents on their sites. So, understand that like that's one aspect of this. The other aspect is that, and this is, so, I mean, that's like really the only negative, I think, is that you're not really contributing to the community overall because of that. That's really the only negative. For me, one of the major reasons that I still torrent and I don't just watch everything on Netflix. Granted, one of the problems with Netflix is that you don't have constant access to things, but this is why I torrent. It speaks to that all the same. For me, like, part of the reason that I torrent stuff is really to just get rid of DRM. It's not like I won't buy these things. Okay. Like, I have Star Trek Beyond. I have that on Blu-ray. Like, if it's a movie I love, I'll fucking get it. I'll lay down the cash. I have no problem with that. Okay. But I better fucking love it. And do I go to theaters? I go to theaters all the time. In fact, in the past few months, I've gone more weekends than I haven't. And I'm going to go tonight. Okay. I have no problem spending money on things. I torrent largely because I feel like I should be able to own what I buy or what I've bought or whatever, and not have to worry about DRM keeping me from really being able to own it and do what I want with it. So torrenting, being a part, taking part in the torrent community is just a great way to get past DRM, which is, in my opinion, it really is. It's completely fucking unethical. Because DRM is like this attempt at a false scarcity. I mean, you could say, well, a band can put DRM in a CD however they want and blah, blah, blah. Well, not really, because a lot of times DRM actually breaks. This is a classic case. It was the first album from Velvet Revolver. Okay, this would have been back in the mid-aughts. All right, Velvet Revolver, of course, Scott Weiland, Slash, all that. The first album from Velvet Revolver had an experimental DRM on it that, as far as I know, never got used again. And you know why? Because there were entire CD players. There was all kinds of CD playing hardware, okay, optical hardware that couldn't play the disc. Yes, that's fucking unethical if somebody lays down $18, which I did as well, because again, I'll buy music. I laid down $18 for that fucking CD. This would have been back, 04, 05, something like that. And it wouldn't play in one of my CD players. No, it is not incumbent upon me to go out and buy a CD player that is somehow compatible with this new bullshit DRM. It's incumbent upon the band to not let anything get in the way of their fans to their music. You understand? So I think DRM is just it's a bad idea, and in many ways, I think it's downright unethical, So I torrent largely to get past DRM, but I still want to own the thing, right? But now that's a mindset. That's not saying there's anything wrong if you don't want to own shit. Okay, I mean, you're just a communist. No, I'm kidding. You're not a communist. But I mean, you get my point. So streaming is a solid notion if you don't actually want to own, what you're trying to access, the content you're trying to get. Me, I'm a big guy on having offline access to shit. I'm a big guy on being able to, I mean, maybe it's because, I don't know, I spend too much time camping or being out in the country or something. But I want access to it. And also I'm a content creator, and I totally, take and remix from shit that I love. And so I like to be able to, include that in my projects and what I do, and take screenshots and, and all the rest of it. So yeah, that's a matter of personal taste. Again, the only part that really, could be seen as a negative as far as having a pre-installed Kodi box or putting Kodi onto some, be it a cheap Amazon Fire TV stick or on a Raspberry Pi or something, is that you really don't contribute to the community that is making streaming possible. I mean, you could say that you're contributing by buying the hardware, but how well do you know where that money is going, right? So that's the only negative. I agree. Running Kodi on something is a fine solution. I totally recommend it. I mean, and Kodi's great not just for streaming. Kodi's great for if you have offline content. If you have a bunch of stuff, on your hard drive. Kodi's fucking awesome. And so yeah, I totally support what you're putting out there. And just the use of those devices, I think that's great. So, I mean, in the war on torrents, yeah, it's getting bad because sites are disappearing all the time and whatever. And if Kodi could be really exciting because it could be sort of that decentralized hardware, kind of like, what is that, D++ or DC+, that where there's no site, you just get straight access to a repository of torrents. That's definitely a wave of the future. That's decentralized access, shall we say, to torrents, as to where, usually going to the Pirate Bay or something like that is more centralized access. So, with Kodi, offering that, yeah, I mean, that's certainly a great backup tool and definitely the direction things are going. I mean, most torrent clients now offer streaming playback anyway while you're downloading it, and then most people just delete it. They really don't, they don't seed it as much as they leech it. So whatever. Anyway, that's long been a problem of seeders and leechers, and yeah. So, but I'm not saying that's something you really have to worry about. Okay, so let's get into some cryptocurrency. Let's get into some Bitcoin, all that good stuff. Just a real quick comment. I'm kind of shocked. People are talking about, so what did Bitcoin do during Consensus? There was the event in New York City, Consensus 2017. Which some argue is the biggest Bitcoin event in the world. Okay, whatever. Or, the biggest crypto blockchain event in the world. What did Bitcoin do? 2,700? It was kissing 3,000. And then it went down to 2,200. And people are like, oh, correction, this is terrible. It's all failing. I can't believe that. No, it's still worth $2,200, $2,300. What the fuck are you talking about? That's fantastic. People kill me. And Zcash did a hell of a rise, which we're going to be talking about Zcash in a future Q&A, maybe even a future Prime episode, because there's some interesting developments, maybe not positive, ones for depending how you look at it, for Zcash that I will be talking about. But anyway, I'm not saying don't invest in Zcash. I'm just saying we're going to talk about some developments. So here we go. Let's see. Okay. So Brian, reading here. Brian, I have been following Mark DeMeasel for some time, and now some time now and his investment theories. So Mark Demisel is a guy I've actually hung with quite a bit. Nice guy. And he's been one of the rare guests on Sovereign Tech over the years. He was on an episode, boy, that was a long time ago. that admittedly, that was like 2 years ago. I think it was he and I were hanging out at PorkFest. And, anyway, he was on the show. He was one of those guests that was actually in studio. It was awesome. The show was a lot of fun. And Stephanie was on. It was a great time. So anyway, he is very much an active trader trying to predict ups and downs and cash out with the right timing. For some year, and actually, I'll stop there for a second. Mark Demisel also makes his entire investment portfolio. It's totally open. Like, he lets anybody kind of look at it, which I have a lot of respect for him for doing that. For some years, reading on, I had done some rudimentary study of conventional investing, and it seemed to me that the wisest mantra is buy and hold, and market timing is a fool's errand. Perhaps crypto is a more quote-unquote pure market that allows a cleaner form of investing. And if you live in some countries that lack certain types of taxation, short-term crypto trading and move in and out of cash positions can make sense. However, I fail to see how U.S. crypto traders wouldn't have difficulty maintaining high ROI, of course ROI is return on investment, given the taxation hurdles of short-term trades. Further, isn't part of the value here diversifying outside of the dollar? Long term, would I rather hold crypto or fiat? That's one of the questions. Yes, I may be experiencing gains in some crypto holdings, but I am going to cash out to dollars. Again, another question mark. Maybe temporarily until I can buy back the crypto at a lower USD price, but that strikes me as a dangerous game. Crypto is an unprecedented investment opportunity, so trying to look at historical performances, I worry, may lead to mistakes. I am more prone to buy and hold for the long term. Curious to hear your thoughts for crypto investors. Okay, so I am not in any way any kind of professional investor. I am sharing my own thoughts. This is not necessarily investment advice. Just putting out sadly, the legal disclaimer out there. I've had some very kind comments sent my way. People calling me the crypto Warren Buffett, which I've talked about on Sovereign Tech Prime episodes. I'm honored by that. Admittedly, yes, I have been saying, what interests me, Zcash interests me. And if 3 weeks ago you were getting into Zcash at $60, well, Zcash went up by a few 100%. In the past past week or so, where now instead of $60, now it's valued at well over $200. In fact, it was kissing like crazy high prices. I think did it do 3 or 4? Like it really went up there. And the person who actually called me the crypto Warren Buffett said, if he's right about Zcash, wow, and well. What do you think? So anyway, I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, but. I'm really not. I don't deserve that title at all because I don't, there's so few cryptos that I actually really pay attention to. I mean, there are so few. Years ago, I used to pay attention to a lot of them, like everything that would kind of come out. And I'd play kind of the game that this emailer or this messenger is describing. But yeah, overall, I mean, there's a few questions in this, but I'm going to break them down. Yeah, the problem in the U.S. with doing a lot of your in and out cash positions, like the messenger talked about, is getting out to cash. Converting your crypto into cash is a very risky operation. No matter how you go about doing it, be it local Bitcoins, or Coinbase or whatever. Okay, it's a very risky proposition in the United States. In my opinion. I know in other parts of the world, very different. There's like whole banks and exchanges or whatever else that you can work with that'll get you the hookup, that'll cash you out into the national currency that you happen to be in. So yeah, in the U.S., I agree. It's tough, to really do that. The best, the only analogous thing you could do to that is, transferring it to another crypto. But even then, you can only hold that really so long. One of the things, and I know no exchange is really ever going to do this because I think it would create some really legal issues. If I were an exchange, I think it would be kind of brilliant to, and this is almost impossible to do, but for a website could pull it off, but there's a lot of risks involved with an exchange doing this because an exchange could just take the money and run. But like I would, I think it'd be interesting if an exchange did some kind of like pegging to have their own little coin or credit on the exchange. And maybe an exchange does this and I just don't know about it. That's entirely possible. But, have some kind of pegging where it's pegged to the US dollar's price no matter what, no matter what the fluctuation. And it allows you to kind of hold something at the value of the US dollar that you could use as purchasing power again. So it'd be credit on the exchange itself, and that's the only place it would have value. And it would kind of like hold that and allow you to purchase things based upon, messing with or based upon how they're stacking up against the US dollar. That would be an interesting thing for an exchange to have. But again, I think the SEC would be on them like no tomorrow if they did that. And you have the risk, like I said, that the exchange would just cash out of that because, that'd just be a huge thing of money they have absolute direct central control over, that it kind of defeats the purpose of cryptocurrencies. But then, these kind of crazy plays in investing really stand against the very notion of cryptocurrencies as well. I might talk about that more in a second, kind of the idea of investing with cryptocurrencies, because I think there's actually an inherent problem with that. There's nothing wrong with you doing investment plays with cryptocurrencies. I'm just saying in the very long term, there's an issue with speculation and investing with cryptocurrencies. Okay. Nothing that's going to make you lose money. It's just something that affects cryptocurrencies in the abstract. All right. So I'll talk about that in a second. But again, it doesn't change anything I'm about to say to you. And it doesn't really matter towards it so much either. So, long term, let's see, or further, isn't part of the value here diversifying outside of the dollar? Yeah, that kind of speaks to the point I wanted to just raise is that, all right, so I'll address it now. Okay, I'm not going to save it for after. I'll address it now. Yeah, this is a big problem. And I've talked about it for a very long time, for years on Sovereign Tech, and that is we really need to get to the point, okay, as cryptocurrency users, at some point, we should get to where a car doesn't cost $30,000, it costs 3 Bitcoins. Do you get what I'm saying? Not that 3 Bitcoins is worth, or not that a Bitcoin is worth $10,000 a piece, to where 3 Bitcoins is $30,000, but to where a car is priced in Bitcoin, not based upon Bitcoin's price as compared to the US dollar. Do you get what I'm saying? Okay. We've got to start pricing things in crypto and not giving a rat's fucking ass about its comparison in value to the US dollar. That is a huge problem with cryptocurrency, is that right now, every single one of them is really based upon the U.S. dollar, and their value based upon a national currency. That is a huge fucking issue that nobody wants to talk about. It really has to get Bitcoin in particular to really be the monies of the future. Needs to get away from that value, of basing its value upon, what its speculative value is in U.S. dollars. Not a new thing for me to say. I used to say it on Free Talk Live years ago. I've said it on Sovereign Tech back when I used to talk crypto a lot more and all that, is that we've got to get to that point to where the US dollar is meaningless, where every government issued currency is meaningless, where we are pricing things on crypto itself. Now, part of the problem is we don't really have a free market to where you could actually do I don't know that you could do price discovery, okay, with a cryptocurrency. Right? Like you don't have the market to where you can find out, okay, well, how much Zcash does a person think a pen is really worth? Or how much Bitcoin is buying a pack of pens, really worth? What does that take shape as without using the US dollar as the value, as the bottom line value? So, I agree. The point is to get away from the dollar, but that's not happening anytime soon. Because people today, I'm not going to go too far into this, but I just want to say, look, today people are not interested in cryptocurrency for cryptocurrency's sake. They are interested in it as a speculative investment situation. And the emailer here is absolutely right in saying that it is a tremendous opportunity for investment, but also understand that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you investing in it. Look, I do this stuff too. Okay. I'm just saying that it stands in contrast to why we want cryptocurrency in the first place. Okay, is to be, and some people argue that, in fact, there was an article in The Atlantic that amazingly talked about the global ANCAP revolution, how Bitcoin is going to become this like new authoritarianism, blah, blah, blah. We'll probably talk about that in the Sovereign Tech Prime episode coming up. But there's some people that want to argue that really all Satoshi was doing was building more of a money transmitter instead of an actual money. I don't agree with that, though. I don't see in his writings or anything like that where that's what he had in mind. He was talking about owning your fucking money. And so Bitcoin is, in my opinion, the best, like if you want to explain Bitcoin to somebody, I've always said this, my favorite one is to say it's PayPal and the US dollar in one. Like it's the money transmitter, because again, there's no PayPal dollars, it's the US dollar. All right. It's the money transmitter and the money at the same time, and that's what Bitcoin is. And now you have people that are saying, no, Bitcoin was just always meant to be PayPal, where it's just the money transmitter. No. Horseshit. It was never, I don't think it was ever thought of that way. So, but also, after a fashion, that is what it has become. It's not money anymore. Now it's just the money transmitter. You could say, well, it's a reserve currency of a type and blah, blah, blah. Well, whatever. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But my point being is that if the purpose was, and if I have to break out the quotes, I can, if the purpose of cryptocurrency was to give people something that they can own themselves, their own kind of money, they really don't have that right now. All they have is something that plays off the US dollar. And that's kind of bullshit. But whatever, regardless, because it is that, and all cryptocurrencies are kind of that right now. Yes, it is a tremendous time for building wealth and investment opportunity. I agree with that statement completely. So anyway, long term, would I rather hold crypto or fiat? Ethically, long term, you want to hold crypto. Personally, and this is just I'm giving a very broad opinion. I don't think the governments of the world are ever going to go anywhere. I don't think the US dollar is going to go anywhere. In fact, I love the old saying that the US dollar is proof of violence. Bitcoin's proof of work, right? Ethereum's proof of stake. Bitcoin is, the US dollar is proof of violence. And I think it's a great point. And it speaks to a larger abstract point, which is that, the US dollar is really, its value comes from nuclear weapons. I'm not the first person to say this, but he who has the he who has the nuclear weapons has the money. Really the greenback being the reserve currency of the world is totally based upon the fact that US has the nukes, and the greenback will always have, the US dollar will always have value as long as the US government has nuclear weapons. And so I don't think that any of that's going to end up going anywhere anytime soon. I really don't agree with a lot of people that say, oh, the US is heading for an economic collapse. They've been saying that forever. It never happens. It doesn't even remotely closely happen. You say, well, what about the 2008, the housing crisis and crash and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. They have the nukes. The money wasn't going to lose value. It's just not going to happen, folks. It'll never fucking happen. As long as there's armies and all this shit, it's just not going to happen. That money is always going to hold some kind of value. So realistically, pragmatically, fiat, at least with the US, is, the US dollar is always going to hold some kind of value. The same cannot be said of crypto. However, because of the open source nature of a lot of crypto, that kind of acts as its own bulwark in that it can always hold some kind of value. But is it going to perform necessarily the same as the US dollar? I don't know if I'd make that claim, but yes, myself personally, just saying what I would do. Yeah, I'd hold in crypto, but I'd be very particular what those cryptos are. They'd have to be cryptos that to this point have some kind of history, or the way that the crypto was brought into existence had nothing to do with, whales and ICOs and all that, which is why even though Zcash is technically so new, it's not even a year old, because it didn't rely upon investors to come into existence. I have a lot more confidence in it because it didn't do an ICO, because it didn't do any of that bullshit. I have a lot more confidence in it. And that's, because other than that, in fact, I talked about this on the live Q&A or Hangout Q&A last night. I said, it was like, because somebody asked me, like, what other ones do you care about? I was like, well, it's Bitcoin, Litecoin, Zcash. That's kind of as far as I go, as far as ones that I'm intrigued by and ones that I think, have some. I mean, look at Litecoin. That's incredible. It's almost a carbon copy of Bitcoin, and it's still going. And now, Coinbase is accepting it, and Yours.network is going to start using it to create their micropayment system. I mean, like, it's amazing that that's still around. That's such a testament to Litecoin. So anyway, yeah, I would hold in crypto. Personally, me ethically, but I'm a guy that's big on kind of ethics and on my principles. Like, I really give a shit about my principles. I don't, I'm not a pragmatist at all, which I know most libertarians seem to be pragmatists, which annoys me to no end, but whatever. Let's see. So, yes, I may be experiencing gains in some crypto holdings, but I am going to cash out to dollars, maybe temporarily until I can buy back the crypto at a lower USD price. But that strikes me as a dangerous game. Yeah, it is. It is kind of a dangerous game because, to describe that, like holding in crypto, kind of the advantage of holding in crypto and doing sort of the long term, which is what I would do, regardless of all the abstract notions that I just laid out. Holding in crypto, you just, look at any crypto, even look at Ethereum, you can even look at a short one like Zcash, look at Litecoin, look at Bitcoin. If people bought Litecoin when it first came out, they may have felt, because there was a point where Litecoin got to like $50 a coin, right? They may have felt that, oh man, I really missed out on this, and if they didn't cash out at 50, maybe they're expecting it to go up to 100. I think a lot of those people, might have some remorse, some investors' remorse that they didn't get out at $50. But no, now, 2 years later, it looks like Litecoin is going to be the reserve currency for Bitcoin, right? Like Litecoin will be the bulwark to all the bullshit that's happening in Bitcoin. So, people that held on all the same and went for a really long game in the orders of years, I think are really going to win out when it comes to Litecoin. And I think that can be true for a lot of cryptocurrencies. If the cryptocurrency has the right magic sauce, has the right stuff baked into it, and that's where the investor needs to look into things. And you can't just run off of features. Features aren't necessarily enough unless it's a feature that really that people want, that say Bitcoin doesn't have, that it just doesn't fucking have. But it's got to be something that people want. And usually you want it to be a feature that is like really technically hard, so there's not a bunch of competitors necessarily, on board, or yeah. So anyway, let's see. Crypto is an unprecedented investment opportunity. So trying to look at it, historical performances, I worry may lead to mistakes. I'm more prone to buy and hold for the long term. Curious to hear your thoughts. Yeah. So these are my thoughts. I agree. Looking at it historically, historically you can look at it, and historically there's ups and downs, and maybe historically even over 2 years, something has been at an all-time low. That doesn't mean that something new can't come out that will, some new development, because it doesn't rely on Litecoin. Litecoin doesn't, just for an example, Litecoin doesn't need a Litecoin Foundation. Any team could just suddenly swoop in, any group of developers could kind of, jump in and, and really bring breathe whole new life into this stuff. Okay. And so cryptocurrencies are unique in that, the way that they can gain new value out of nowhere, that's unprecedented. That's why, you might not want to cash out of everything, because something new something totally new could come along. For an example, I'm not saying do this. Believe me, I'm really not saying do this. But I'm just saying, say there was something like Blackcoin. Blackcoin was kind of a new hotness for a little while. Somebody could come out with, somebody could bake in OpenBazaar into Blackcoin or something, right? NXT tried to do that and it didn't take off, but somebody, could put in this really great implementation, and maybe Blackcoin could suddenly have zero knowledge proofs baked in or whatever. And then suddenly Blackcoin, which other people thought was anathema, suddenly becomes the most valuable currency in the world, right? And all it takes is 2-3 people. It doesn't take an entire government. It doesn't take an army to say this has value. It just takes a few, a couple, even one person, to just make, to really create this quantum shift in code that's been sitting around for a while that suddenly holds all new value and goes through the roof. So yeah, I mean, keeping your money within crypto, I think gives you, I mean, it's riskier than cashing out into dollars, but I think it opens up a lot more opportunities. It's really like, I think cash is a very binary thing, and if you're hanging out in crypto and sticking it with and keeping it within crypto, it's a quantum affair. Okay, the possibilities are almost nearly endless, it seems, as to what investment opportunities could exist when you're staying within crypto. Sooner or later you got to cash out into something, but Bitcoin and some other stuff. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, you're seeing it now. People are buying Teslas with Bitcoin, and they're just buying them straight. They're doing a Bitcoin transaction. They're not cashing it out into dollars. They're doing a Bitcoin transaction. And that's becoming a really popular, thing as well. And so that's the other nice thing is that when you're within crypto, I mean, also, here's another major advantage for it. Say, you gotta run, and you want to hold on to your investments. You don't want it to be in cash, because if you try crossing the border of, say, the US, with cash, you can't cross with more than $10,000. And I guarantee you, if you have even less, they're going to hold you up. They don't give a shit about legality. So yeah, you want to have it somewhere, to where you can access it at any point and nobody knows that you have it. So I think sticking within crypto, I mean, there's advantages, disadvantages either way, but doing the investing within the cryptocurrency space itself and kind of leaving it there, yeah, I think that's totally valid. It's the route that I personally like to go. And yeah, there it is. Don't trust the exchanges though. This is another thing, is that a lot of people will want to hold all this shit in exchanges. I wouldn't trust the exchanges with holding money for anything. I'd absolutely, if you got it, if you have to have a computer that's running 20 billion wallets or something, or I mean, the nice thing is you have like Jack's wallet now, right? That handles so many different currencies or something. Try to have that shit on your own. You don't have to have whole copies of blockchains or anything, but just really try to have control over your crypto. Don't leave it on other sites. Don't leave it on exchanges. Don't do that kind of shit. In my opinion, that's just my opinion on it. And as I've talked about in past Q&As, I'm also not a huge fan of hardware wallets. Before anybody asks me that, I have concerns over some hardware wallets. Those concerns might not be so crazy if, like, say, a tech giant was making the hardware, but I don't know. I kind of feel like you're putting some interesting trust in. I mean, hardware is very different from software. Developing hardware takes teams, and sometimes large teams, and it takes a lot of money. As to where developing software, one person and a penny. I mean, it doesn't even take that. It's so easy. Yeah. So I have concerns about hardware overall. But anyway, so I hope that kind of answered it. And I hope that gave you something to think about. And yeah, because in the US, you're right, it's hard to even cash out. It's hard to turn things into cash. So I would, just chill in the crypto space. And I mean, shit, you can get stuff, you can get anything you need on Amazon, right? With gift.com or eGifter or whoever. And you can go to Target if you got a super Target near you. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many great options as far as that goes, that you really, I really think it's to the point. You don't really have to leave the crypto space anymore. And it's in the US, I think it's, with what the investment and holdings you're doing in the crypto space, it's dangerous to cash out. It's potentially dangerous. And, also, yeah, I think with crypto, long-term, think super long-term, in fact, there's kind of Bon Jovi had these 5 golden rules, and golden rule number 4, which I've followed these, for a huge part of my life. Golden rule number 4 is think really long-term. And he's talking in the order of decades. And I don't think that's a crazy thing to do, even with cryptocurrencies, is to think super, super long-term. I mean, maybe not decades, but most investors, are trigger investors. They're trying to make these really quick day by day decisions when, look, software development doesn't go day by day. The very nature of the beast doesn't lend itself to, to kind of what in normal investing, the way things kind of operate, where announcements do this and all that. I mean, it's, in fact, you really want to be careful with that. Monero, they pulled that bullshit recently, where I guess like the head developer at Monero, he played it up like there was going to be some big announcement. Monero's value could start skyrocketing, and then he said, "Oh no, it was all bullshit. You should only trust the code. If you don't see it in the code, don't pay any attention. Don't buy into the hype." And the value of Monero instantly went down. So I mean, I thought it was a bullshit thing for him to do. There's somewhat of a point in there, I guess, but yeah, just think long term with crypto. Don't get into hype cycles and all that. I mean, that's an easy way to invest in crypto, is look for crypto that has an interesting feature set or acclaimed feature set. Wait for their ICO, buy into their ICO, and maybe even within like 2 hours, sell out. And you could double, triple, quadruple your, whatever you invested, but like, or maybe even just like wait a week and just sell the fuck out of it as soon as the, they make any kind of pre-sale available or something. I mean, like that's definitely one way to do things. You're not going to get the crazy gains that I think you could get if you did like a really long hold. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely another opportunity or another avenue that people could go. One that I don't like though, because I mean, that's so fucking risky, really to do that. Cause you might buy a lot into it and, the ICO cash out, the pump and dump might not pump, and then you're left with crap that an exchange might not, and nobody might even want to trade. So that's, that's kind of the issue with that. So yeah, I think I pretty much agree with the emailer. I would go long, I like to think long-term on investments. Absolutely. I mean, you can pay attention to some news, but I don't know, overall, I would think, I would be thinking long-term. So, okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? We're almost at the hour, so let's wrap it up a bit. Here's something else from the community tab on Patreon here. I'm not a big sci-fi fan. I'm only a few episodes in, but The Expanse is a great show. Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, this is something I think, in fact, that's interesting because a lot of people are talking about that there's concerns about the ratings for The Expanse, for the show The Expanse, which The Expanse is based off of the novels by James S.A. Corey, who's actually two authors. It's not just one guy. But anyway, it is a seemingly, I shouldn't say it's popular. It's a very well-received show on Syfy, or what used to be called the Sci-Fi Channel. I call it Syfy now to insult it. But it is many ways the only hard science fiction on television right now. Hard science fiction meaning that it deals with the realities of science, the realities of the laws of physics, the realities of this. It's not like all fantastical like Star Wars would be, or Star Trek's really not considered hard science fiction either, because you have warp drive, you have all these things that break the laws of physics. Not to say that The Expanse doesn't get into that realm, and I won't spoil anything, but it is effectively hard science fiction. I mean, another example like Babylon 5, that's hard science fiction. And you can tell just by like what is it, the fighter ships in the starfighters in Babylon 5, what they're called starfighters. They have like 4 big engines, and they have like all these mini thrusters that allow for maneuvering. Like that's because they're taking into consideration how that kind of technology could actually work as compared to where it's just something that kind of moves in space and you don't know how, and only the engines in the back allow for that, which is largely fucking impossible. So anyway, The Expanse is really hard science fiction. I've talked about it a few times. At least I've mentioned it. I'm sure. I don't know if I've done a full review necessarily in the past on Sovereign Tech, but I consider it, with that, and we did the full review, Stephanie and I, which we got a lot of great response from. We did the full review of Sense 8, the show Sense8, which is on Netflix, which is also made by the creator of Babylon 5, that being J. Michael Straczynski and the Wachowskis, the makers of The Matrix, of course. They are the creators and writers and directors of The Matrix. Sense8 on Netflix, like that, Sense8 and The Expanse, I think are just the two best TV shows, the two best series that you can watch right now. They're, just rock solid. The Expanse is going into season 3. And fortunately, they did get a season 3. There was some concern over that. There's a lot of story to tell here because there's a lot of books they still need to cover with, with as far as the Expanse novels themselves. And I think the novels are great. I mean, all this stuff is really cool. But Yeah, so The Expanse. I'm glad people are enjoying it. I've had a few questions ever since my Sense8 review of other people saying, "Hey, what else are you into? What else you want to check out?" I've done some of the top 8s. In fact, we talked about this on the live Hangout Q&A yesterday. There is one patron, and the public key to get access to this is in the show notes for every Q&A episode. RETROSHARE, which is an interesting software. Look it up if you don't know about it. I talked about it recently. I've talked about this whole thing I'm about to talk about recently. But anyway, he's making available through RETROSHARE, which is this ability to share files, and it fucking does everything. It's an internet replacement, in my opinion. It's just incredible. Or a World Wide Web replacement, I should say. He's making available everything, like every show that I talk about, he's trying to make them all available anyway. All the stuff that I talk about, the things that I list off, like all the movies that I've done in the top 8s and all the stuff in like books or, whatever else. He makes it all available for people to get, you can get your hands on. You don't have to worry about, torrents or anything like that. It just gets all done through RETROSHARE. So yeah, I've had people, ask me like what other things to check out. I had some people recently say they started watching the original Battlestar Galactica, not the bullshit from the Sci-Fi Channel, and that was bullshit. It was just a horrendous show. Yeah, I got it. Look, Battlestar Galactica, the first couple seasons, yep, I'm with you. That was exciting. That was interesting. As soon as it got to season 3, it just went right out the boom tubes. I mean, it was so terrible. And season 4 was even worse. Like, I mean, that is a shit show. I get any reason that anybody likes Battlestar Galactica is because of the first 2 seasons, and really maybe even just the first season. That's where its entire gravitas, or any sense of, not gravitas, its reputation and any of its appreciation comes from. And I get so annoyed by that, because it's like, okay, you had one great season, but that's all you had out of 4 goddamn years. And you had shitty movies, you had shitty everything else. Like, oh man, that drives me up the fucking wall. As to our other shows, they deliver regularly. Yeah, you can have like a bad first season, but as long as some people feel, I don't agree with this, but some people feel with The Next Generation, with Star Trek The Next Generation, you have, yeah, the first season sucks, but then after that, the first and second seasons are a little rough, but then after that, you've got a lot of great seasons. Okay, yeah, so then it can be a great show, because maybe it just needed that buildup or something. It's where it's the exact opposite of Battlestar Galactica. You had one great season, and then everything fucking went to shit, after the fact. And bull. Like, I can't, I look for it. I've looked for it online. Like, explain to me how seasons 3 and 4, and don't say season 3 is great because it addressed the Iraqi occupation. The bullshit it did. It didn't do it in the way that science fiction is supposed to do it. Science fiction is supposed to do it without being a hammer on your head. Okay, it's supposed to do it in like a kind of a like you don't even notice. It's supposed to be subversive. You don't even notice that it's addressing what's happening in Iraq or anything. No, they it was open. It was disgusting how open it was that they were talking about that. But anyway. And then season 4, nobody can defend season 4. Nobody does. Oh, that show is so terrible. Wow. I wish people would just admit it and stop salivating over it just because a bunch of, hot women will cosplay as Starbuck or something, right? Man, be honest. Just say it. No, the show sucked. And it has no... It doesn't, kind of like I talked about with Sense8, it doesn't have that rewatchability, right? It does, like, you can watch it once, and then you can maybe watch it one more time to see like how all that stuff interlaced, even though Ron Moore will tell you he did not have a plan, even though he made a movie and really just made a mockery of himself called The Plan. He's full of it. He's so full of it. Oh, I get so mad about that show because everybody talks about it like it's the fucking second coming, which I wish it was Battlestar Galactica, the second coming, but it's not. Be honest with yourself. The show sucks. I mean, you had a good first season. Second season was all right. Having Commander Kane, be a lesbian was pretty cool. I'm with you. All right. But otherwise, the show was fucking garbage. So anyway, okay. Sorry. That's not what I wanted to get into. Just if you've never heard me talk about it, there you go. The Expanse is way better than that for a million reasons. In fact, I don't think The Expanse, in fact, can't go down the same bad path that Battlestar Galactica had, because you have the novels and they have to largely follow the novels, and they said they're going to. Whew. Anyway, okay, so what else do I recommend? Yep, I've been checking out The Handmaid's Tale. Of course, I'm a huge fan of the book, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I've been a fan of that book for a long time. The TV show's pretty good. There you go. So I don't know. I don't know that I'd call it the greatest, show on television right now, but it's pretty good. And let's see. Yeah. So, okay. So a show that maybe you didn't know that I've recommended in the past that you might want to check out. Here's the thing. You've got to be willing to watch really, really bad effects and maybe even some cheesy acting at certain points. But one of the best shows that you could ever see is Blake 7. And it is, it's not like hard science fiction, but it's certainly harder science fiction than most. It's a dark show. It's a very sardonic show, and it came out in the 70s. It's made by Terry Nation, who's known for his work with Doctor Who, of course, back in the 70s. Back when Doctor Who was actually Doctor Who, and it's not this modern bullshit that... Yeah. Does anybody else... let me know. All right, I'm going to wrap this up here, but does anybody else go to IO9, the site io9.com, and do you get sick of the weekly posts of, we have to talk about last night's Doctor Who? Like, that's how they title every single fucking one. And I can't even imagine how many hits they get on this stuff. It's like, well, why do we have to talk about it? And then if you even click on it, it's always some mundane, horseshit crap. It's a total click generator. And oh man, that's the kind of shit on the internet that just drives me up the wall. Sorry, I'm getting. You think I get angry about anarchy stuff? Boy, talk to me about science fiction sometime. I am a big fan of science fiction. I appreciate that the other person isn't so big into sci-fi. And it's cool that they dig The Expanse, because a lot of people were worried that The Expanse would only appeal to people who aren't into science fiction, or who are into science fiction heavy. But this listener, and I love you for it, you're obviously like, no, I'm not big into science fiction, but I get this. This is awesome. So that's good. That breaks that mold pretty easily. But all right, look, I'm not gonna even finish my thought. I'm not gonna get into it. Just so much modern shit. Anyway, so Blake 7 is an awesome show that I think anybody should check out. You pretty much are going to have to torrent it. I think they have the DVD sets out there that maybe aren't a terrible price, but this was a show that used to be very hard to get in the United States. It was almost impossible to see. I've told the story in the past about how, when I was a young man, I paid for it to effectively get smuggled out of the UK. I paid for, like VHS made copies. This was not a cheap enterprise on my part, to get smuggled out of the UK, because you just couldn't get your fucking hands on this show. But I knew about it, and you'd hear about it at conventions, at science fiction conventions and everything. It's like, oh, this is like the best show ever, And, it lived up to every ounce of the hype. In fact, there's one of the lead characters in it has a pretty diverse cast. One of the lead characters in it, Cara Avon, is, I've tried to pattern half my life after that guy. He's so cool. A total egoist. If you ever want to see the embodiment in fiction of Max Stirner's egoist dream, just look at Cara Avon. That guy is as egoist as he is the ultimate egoist in fiction, in my opinion. Just straight up, he absolutely is. So Blake 7 is a lot of fun. Has to do with, kind of a one-ship rebellion against a tyrannical empire. It's, again, you got to get past the hokey effects. You got to get past, maybe some rough acting here and there. Rough acting, it was fine acting in its day. Just today, it's, might be seen as hokey or campy or something. There's some episodes that might be a little bit weak, but overall, it is just top-notch drama. And there's some really dark shit that happens in it that you don't even get in science fiction today. So I think it's a really cool show. I used to advertise for it because there's audiobooks that continue. Well, they're novels, but then there's also audiobooks. There's the Liberator Chronicles and all that stuff. There's an entire media empire that has been built around Blake 7 of extra content, novels, audiobooks, audio plays, all of that. The Sci-Fi Channel has threatened, I'll say, to remake it in the past. They've never actually, pulled the trigger on that. Thankfully, in my opinion, because there's nothing wrong with the original. In fact, I don't know if the Sci-Fi Channel, even in the Sci-Fi Channel's heyday, back when it was cool, back when it was called the Sci-Fi Channel, I don't think they've even ever played Blake 7. which is interesting in itself. I don't know if Blake 7's on Netflix either, but I would. This is a show if you want to see like that rare science fiction show, and one actually that a lot of people might not have seen, but that is really that cool. I totally recommend Blake 7. Okay, yeah, we can wrap this up. I was going to do a little review because I've been watching it over and over again of the Last Jedi trailer, but I think I might have talked about that recently on a maybe I didn't get into it on the Star Wars update, but I really enjoyed that trailer. There's a whole lot to take away from it. Can't wait to see another one. So, okay, that's it. That's it for this week. There's your Q&A. Talk a little crypto investing, talk a little torrents, made some corrections because unlike other people, I can admit when I'm a little off base. I can. So, and there you go. Yeah, and of course I have other content that'll be getting released this week. I need to go see Wonder Woman in an all-new Sovereign Tech, of course, every Saturday. It'll be here for you. Can't wait for you to hear it because I got some great stories. I will see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.